that worked with us at KGO who is living a completely different way than any of us are doing, and has been doing it for quite a while. I want to welcome now Kristin Hanes to the show. Kristin, I am so happy to see your face. She is with the waywardhome.com. I have included the website in the show notes. Kristin, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yay!
Oh, it's so fun. I'm so happy to see both of you.
So, okay, first off, I noticed the background. Where are you?
I'm in my camper van right now in Mexico, actually in a boatyard parked next to my sailboat, which we're currently working on and getting ready to go in the Sea of Cortez. So that's where I am right now.
Wow. Okay, so for people that only know you by your voice, we all worked at KGO together. You're an amazing reporter. And so can you just give us the background of how you started being what I call this nomadic lifestyle, where you aren't living in a traditional home, apartment, condo, something like that? How did this all start for you?
Yeah, so this started, as you know, in 2016, tons of the newsroom got laid off. And I was one of those people. And so quickly I had to figure out how to not pay rent in the San Francisco Bay Area. Because I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm going to go into debt paying rent. I can't, maintain this lifestyle without having a job. And at the time, he's my current partner as well, but my boyfriend, Tom, had a sailboat he had just purchased. And so I informed him, I've been laid off. I'm giving notice at my apartment and I am moving onto your sailboat. And this was a sailboat. And his sailboat was, an old boat and it needs tons of restoration at the time. It had like no bathroom that worked, no kitchen that worked.
Oh, wow.
It was really like difficult to go and start living on this boat. But that's why I started living alternatively. And then, that evolved into creating this website for other people that also want to do the same thing. But that layoff was the reason why I started this journey toward tiny living in the first place.
So you're on the boat. How is that at first? I mean, again, you just described it. It was very rustic, to be nice. Talk about the highs and lows. I mean, kind of lay it out for us about, was there a moment, I guess my first question is, where you're like, okay, the first night, first week, I could do this. Was there ever this like, what the hell am I doing right now?
Oh, definitely. It was hard at first, to be honest, like, because the boat did not have amenities. And before I had been living on a pretty nice floating home houseboat in Sausalito, which is just like a house with all the amenities you could possibly want. And then suddenly I am on this sailboat. I have no job. I have like a little bit of unemployment money coming in. And it was kind of like exciting at first, but also very challenging. And one of the other things that made it challenging is there are live aboard laws and quotas in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Right.
So in the marina we were in, we were only like technically allowed to be on the boat 2 nights per week. And so therefore we had to split that time between maybe sleeping in a Prius or sleeping in a van that I got in 2018, or I did a ton of house sitting and pet sitting in the area, or we anchored the boat out. And so there was all these other issues with us not being allowed to live there, which caused some stress and anxiety on my part. If we did exceed the 2 days, which we did sometimes, we would just kind of creep around and leave really early, go to the gym, and I would stay at this gym called the Bay Club. People in the Bay Area will be familiar with that, but I would stay there like 10 hours a day. That was my daytime home. And so I know there was a lot of challenges in the beginning, for sure. It was not like, oh, this is so fun, I'm living on a boat. Although when we did take the boat out and anchor it in different places in the San Francisco Bay, it was beautiful. It's like we're in nature, we're away from people. And so it felt like a different world. But definitely being in the city and trying to live this alternative lifestyle is hard. It's way more difficult than it is now in my life, luckily. But definitely the first few years until 2020, when we left the Bay Area, had their share of difficulty.
Right. Did you ever think about not necessarily doing that sort of lifestyle, just leaving an expensive area like the Bay Area and living more traditionally in a cheaper area?
Yeah, except for the problem was my partner Tom has a daughter and she was not yet 18. And so for that, he was remaining in the Bay Area to be a part of her life. And he still had a good job in the Bay Area. And so that allowed him to have the income to restore this sailboat. And so that's partly why we waited so long to leave, is we waited until she turned 18. And then that was in 2020. And then boom, we were down the coast in the sailboat heading for Mexico.
Nice.
When you're sitting there in the camper van, I'm assuming it's a rented camper van that you give it back and when you're ready to get back aboard the sailboat, or if it's yours, how do you manage both vehicles at one time?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely mine, and this is our second camper van. The first one was a Chevy Astro, if you can imagine, a little minivan. That was the first van I got in 2018, and we lived in that for 3 years off and on, splitting time with the sailboat and this tiny van. And we upgraded to this one in 2021, which Tom built out this interior you see now. It's not done. It's a DIY van, but we've spent about 6 months in this van in the US, come to Mexico and spend 6 months in the boat, and then we just put the
Okay.
van in storage during that time. And I still have the Chevy Astro in storage in Yuma. So I have 2 vans now and a boat.
Oh,
So 3 tiny
wow.
homes, but yeah, we're definitely on the move a lot, except for when we're here at the boatyard working on the boat. So,
Is it easy to
yeah.
find a place to shower? And is it I think to myself, if I didn't have access to a shower or I was constantly in a place where you had to put a quarter in a wall in order for the water to come out type of thing,
Right.
like how different of a life that would be. Is that a problem or is that the biggest problem or what do you see as the biggest challenge?
So that I got used to pretty quickly. In the Bay Area, it was easy because I was a member of the Bay Club and they have beautiful shower facilities and towels,
Mhm,
galore. That was fantastic.
mhm,
But when we left the area, when we live in our van, we either use the campground one or we have a solar shower because we spend a lot of time off grid. So we go
mhm,
down these dirt roads on public lands and we're parking in the middle of nowhere. And so we do use a solar shower. We heat up the water in the van on the stove and hang it outside and shower outside. And it's actually quite lovely. Sometimes I do miss, like, being able to just stand in the hot water for 10
Yeah.
minutes
mhm,
or take a bath. That's one of the
mhm,
things. So we supplement that with going to maybe a hot spring resort or an RV park that has mineral springs, which there's in Desert Hot Springs, California, you can, rent an RV spot with access to, like, 13 beautiful mineral pools. So that's kinda where I get my
Wow.
bath
mhm.
out of the situation. But I'd
Yeah,
say probably the hardest part is actually just the constant movement and the constant seeking of resources. So if
right,
we move to a new location, it's like, oh, where do I grocery shop? Where do I do laundry? Where can we
right.
fill up our water tanks? And so I find myself like on my phone a lot, just research, research, research. And we call it hunting and gathering. It's like
Mm,
you're
Yeah,
hunting
no,
for your
yeah.
basic necessities a lot of the time. And so
yeah.
when you're doing that, it takes so much time out of your life that you're like, oh, when do I work? When do I do this and that?
Mhm,
And so, but when you do find that sweet spot, like we found one outside Yuma, Arizona, and we were there for like 2 months working on the van. I was working on my business, and then we knew where to go get all those items. And so that
mhm,
felt more relaxing to kind of take a step back and
Yeah.
yeah.
not run around so much. So that's probably my biggest challenge is the balancing of running around versus staying put.
Now you mentioned your business. Talk a little bit about how I mean, I know many people are saying it doesn't sound like it's inexpensive though.
Mhm,
Obviously you have expenses if you're building things out and
mm.
how do you make money, Kristen?
Yeah, so I started this blog, The Wayward Home in 2017, and I had no idea, what a blog or an online business was. I came from, radio news reporter background. That's all I knew how to do. And I read this article about a woman that made money blogging, and and at the time she was making like 100,000 a month blogging, and I was like, what?
Wow.
Like
What?
I know. I was like, that's a viable income source. Like I have
Sign me
no
up.
idea.
Mhm,
I know. That's what I said. And so in 2017, I just started getting on that bandwagon and I started taking classes and I was like, I'm going to treat this like a new degree. I'm going to learn this thing. And it took time, but in a period of maybe a couple years, I was able to replace, my full-time income. And that's through a combination of advertising revenue and affiliate revenue, and getting traffic mostly through Google searches. So you write articles that people will find on Google that gets you
Right.
traffic, and then you make money from that traffic. And so that's my main income source. And I was able to quit, freelance writing and voiceover work many years ago. And this is like my
wow.
full business. And so it's really fun and exciting.
Well, yeah, I was checking out your website. And again, her website is thewaywardhome.com and it's very professional looking. I follow you on Instagram and all the social medias and your videos. And so I'm happy that you're able to do this. Would you have described yourself as a person that could transition to this type of lifestyle before you were kind of forced into it?
No, I mean, not really. Although I think it helps. I came from a background of someone who grew up camping. I grew up
Okay.
backpacking. I grew up loving nature and not really liking cities. I remember in my 20s, I was working at Como Radio up in Seattle, and I was, young, 26, and I chose to live on Bainbridge Island. And everybody was like, "Why is someone so young living on Bainbridge Island?" It's because I want to be in nature. I want to be in the
Mm,
trees. Like, I don't
Mhm,
like the city. I don't like people. So I do think my background kind of helped me I'll transition to this lifestyle. And plus my Tom he loves this. He'd been living on a sailboat before. He's cruised the Panama Canal, and he's more of a rugged kind of outdoors guy, and he's fun to be with. And just because he was doing it made me want to do it as well. And we had so much fun together. But doing it on my own would have been, I don't think I would have done it. I think I would have instead I would have moved out of San Francisco. I probably would have moved home to my parents' house in Portland, found a job, a
Right.
normal job, and just followed that path. But it's only because of him that I decided to, oh, I want to try this. He's doing it. I could do it with him. And so that's for the main reason that I did this.
What does your family think of this, though? I mean, I'm sure they're used to it maybe now, but I can only imagine my parents in my head being like, "You're doing what? No, come home. Come home. I got a warm bed and shower for you. Come home."
Yeah, totally. Luckily, my parents are pretty open-minded. They were also, mountain climbers and skiers and outdoors people. And my dad, when he moved to Oregon, he lived in a blue van, a Dodge van, and my stepdad as well had a van he lived in. And so they're just like, whatever. Kristen just likes to do what she wants to do, and they weren't too worried about it. And now my dad actually has a minivan that he goes camping in and sleeps in. He does live in a house, but he camps in a van. And I was with him the first night he did that, and I thought that was really funny. And my mom travels in an RV like 3 to 6 months a year.
Oh, nice.
So
So it's in your blood.
Yeah, I think it's in my blood. Luckily.
Now, I don't want to make any assumptions about, your future plans or whatever, but it was something that we were kind of talking about before we brought you on. And John asks, would she do this if she had kids? Now, I meant your partner had a daughter, older. Did she ever go with you? And is that a question you guys talk about, or is that already decided?
Yeah, so I don't think we are going to have kids, but in terms of his daughter, who's now 21, she did join us on the sailboat a little bit in the San Francisco Bay, but more now. She actually joined us for a week last spring in the Sea of Cortez, and this year she wants to
Nice.
join us for a couple weeks to a month possibly, and she's loving it. But that being said, I do know a lot of people, especially on sailboats, that do have children. In this boatyard I'm in, there's a couple kids running around, and you do see people that choose to cruise with their kids. I
Okay.
think van life with kids is a little harder because vans are just so small. I think you can
Yes.
bring a baby, like some people do bring a baby up to like a 2 to 4 year old in a van, but at that point you really need an RV, I think, or a larger sailboat. And I have seen people doing that. I think for me, I'm not totally sure, because I don't have children. I don't know how difficult it is. So I don't know, but I can imagine it would make it way more challenging to have children and try to do this lifestyle.
Here you are working in your van.
Look at that.
Yes, that's my first van. That's the Chevy Astro minivan, and that's parked right by the Golden Gate Bridge right there. And I would cook like that too, right on one of those little benches. And we would drive around Marin County looking for places that we could park stealthily and cook our dinner and sleep in the van. So that was definitely challenging and interesting at the same time.
You had a recent post that showed like what people think van living or whatever's like, and then you showed what it's really like with like stuff everywhere. And you always, and you had another one where I think you were doing yoga, which you do, but you're like, because there's a lot of influencers and people that kind of make it seem so romantic, right? And it's so lay it out for us. I mean, what's the best part and what's the not so great part?
Yeah, so the best part is definitely, I think that picture, and I posted that picture of me doing yoga outside my van, and it was a desert and it was warm, it was evening, and the sunset was just glowing in the sky. And to me, that was like perfection. It's like a Zen moment. It's wonderful
Mhm.
outside. And so the best moments are moments like that, or moments when I'm just in nature and we love to mountain bike and hike and just be in nature all the time. And for me, it's like a culture shock to go back to a city. I'm like, get me out of here. But being in nature is definitely the best part, along with the flexibility, because I do have a remote income. I can
Right.
travel. Like we
Yeah.
go home to Oregon, and I'm there for now like 2, 3 months out of the summer. When I had a full-time job, I was there for a weekend here, a week, a
Yeah.
few days there.
Mhm.
But now I really choose where to spend my time. And that's like another hugely beneficial part of it, just that freedom. And so those are my favorite parts. And probably the least favorite parts are the movement, the instability, the being away from things I love to do that only cities offer. For example,
Mhm.
like I love dancing, like ballroom dancing or
I remember
Latin
you used to
dancing
do
or
that. Yeah.
tango. I used to do that like many nights a week, and that just can't happen when you're out in nature on the move. And Tom liked to play in a band. That's what he did. And that's something that's hard to find. So those kind of, community or cultural activities you can't really do. You're more doing nature activities or surfing or mountain biking. So I think that's a really hard part, and the lack of community. Here in the boatyard, actually, there's a lot of community because there's a lot of cool people that are working on their cruising sailboats. But in the camper van, you're often just by yourself in the middle of nowhere, and there's not really that sense of community. And so that's another challenging side of it. So I'd say those are probably the harder ones. And the movement and the researching is
Yeah.
pretty challenging as well.
Are you ever scared? Like, and I mean, physically, like, I mean, I know that you have your partner with you, Tom, but like on the ocean, I don't know. Like, these are the things that pop into my mind. Like, how do you sleep, for instance, when you're sailing? Are you scared of bears? I don't know. I'm not trying to be silly, but it can be isolating. I can imagine. You said we park in the middle of nowhere. Well, I'm a horror movie fanatic, so I'm just thinking, somebody's gonna come out and get me and my partner, and who's gonna know that we're gone because we're in the middle of nowhere? Like, are you ever scared?
Weirdly, I'm not very scared, but Tom is the vigilant one. I don't know. He's always like, his brain goes through all the what if scenarios and all the this could happen scenarios. And he's kind of attuned and listening to everything. And maybe because he's there, I'm not scared. But the only time that it is more nerve wracking is when we're in a city or close to an urban center.
Oh, interesting.
And what's interesting is one time we were camping up at Pantole, and this was such a long time ago on Mount Tam. And we were the only ones camping in that campground. And a group of pretty ruffian kids, actually from Mill Valley. You wouldn't imagine they'd be ruffians, but they were. They came and they were drinking and they were loud. And we told them to be like, please be quiet. It's 10 p.m. It's quiet hour. And they started like circling our tent, yelling like, drag them out. And that was really scary. And we actually called the cops, and the rangers came and talked to them and told them to like dump their alcohol out. And then the rangers left and the guys started yelling threats down at us. We actually ran out of the tent and into the woods, and then we had to call the cops again. And I think that was our last night pitching a tent in the San Francisco Bay Area. We were like, we don't like this. So that's the only time I felt afraid was near a big city. And so if we ever have to camp near cities or like rest stops or anywhere near people, I'm way more nervous than if I'm out in the middle of nowhere, because I don't think people are driving out of cities down dirt roads to find people in vans. I think the criminals are sticking to the urban areas. So that's how I feel safe in nature in the van. And in the boat, I haven't felt scared yet because we haven't hit any real rough seas or bad conditions.
Okay.
But in the Sea of Cortez, there's not exactly like the Navy or the Coast Guard standing by to rescue you down here off of Baja. And I have felt nervous at night. We've had winds gusting 40, 50 knots when we're sailing. And if one of us falls off deck, that could be very, very scary. And so I do think about that. And so that's probably one of the most scariest parts is stay on the boat. We're always wearing a life jacket. Yeah. And because when you're in, sorry, what was that?
I was just going to say, do you think you will ever get to an age where this lifestyle won't be something that you can handle? And so I guess the question is, do you save with that in mind, that eventually you're going to have to move to a more stable location where, you won't have to live as physical a life?
Yes, for sure. I definitely put tons of money aside because one benefit of this lifestyle is it's really cheap. I think like to live in this boatyard, we pay our rent is like $250 a month, and we have a boat here and a van here, and that includes I have a full hookup all the time in this van. We have unlimited water, bathroom, shower, and then we went out to eat the other night and it was like $14. The groceries are cheap, and so our living is so affordable that I am able to put a lot of money aside, and I'm thinking like one day I'll use that maybe to purchase real estate or transition. There is a couple here and they're 70 and they've been doing this for like 30, 40 years. And they finally purchased a property in Arizona with a house, and they're moving on to it this year and selling their boat. But there does become a point where you just desire, I think, more creature comforts. And I could see myself maybe doing it part-time. Like I have a house but I do this sometimes. So I think there's always change and movement there. And so we'll see. I might buy a property at some point, live there part of the year. But luckily I do have savings that I could do that.
That's good.
So
Yeah,
I'm thankful.
So you were kind of forced into this, obviously, with getting laid off and not wanting to move home and those sorts of things. But I know a lot of people have, they're watching this, they follow your blog and they daydream, right? What is the first thing or some of the first things people should really consider before they even think about this sort of lifestyle?
Yeah, I'd say that people should be used to or used to the idea that there are going to be a lot of discomforts in the lifestyle. Like, it's not always dreamy. It's sometimes difficult. You sometimes feel very, dirty. I hate feeling dirty. That's the one thing that I don't like.
Hmm.
And there were a couple of times where I did feel our old van actually had all these cracks in it. And so when we'd go down dirt roads, it would fill with dust and it would be on my pillow, it'd be on my refrigerator and my hair, and I hated it. And I'm like, this is disgusting. I want to live in a house. But this new van, that's not a problem. It's never dusty in here, and we do take shower. It has a 30-gallon water tank, and so we take showers like every day. And so that's how I have made this work for me. But if you don't have that ability, people might really not like that. Like I've read some posts from van lifers, and they're like, "I haven't showered in 5 days," and I'm like,
No.
"How do you do that?" Not for me. But if you don't have that capacity in your van to carry that much water, you can't shower every day. But luckily
Right.
we have that and we made that happen in our life. So I think people have to know that they have to plan for these things. Like, do you need a toilet in your van? Like that's another thing that we
I would
don't
say
have, but
yes. I would say I
I
want a
tried it.
toilet.
I tried it and it was disgusting. I tried a composting toilet, and
Uh-uh.
the other kind of toilet you can have in your van is a chemical one. So you actually have to go to the bathroom in this cartridge, wheel it out of your van with chemicals in it, and dump it into a toilet. So you have to like look at everything
No,
being
no,
dumped.
no, never
And
mind. I
so
don't want that.
it doesn't work. It doesn't work in this small space. In an RV, you have a black tank and a hose. So it's way easier. And so people should think about, can I deal with a van, which is
Yeah.
more like glamorized tent camping, or do I need an RV that has like an actual shower and hookups and a toilet that drains into the ground, like into the right sewer hole in the campground? Like, so there's a lot of things to think about with choosing your rig for your particular level of comfort. I think
Yeah.
van lifers are a different breed than RVers because we can deal with way less comforts. But maybe someday I'll get a bigger RV. So there's so many options
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
my mom has a class A and it's as big as my boat. And so there's, so many options out there for people who want to try nomadic living. Like they don't have to do the van. They can get a larger, more comfortable RV. And so that's what I would
Yeah.
coach people is like really figure out what you want. And you can go rent something, like go rent something for a week and see
And
how
see if
that
you like it.
feels. So that's another thing I tell people.
And obviously gas prices, I mean, it has to also I mean, you were talking about how cheap it is. It's not cheap if
Yeah.
you're paying 4, 5, $6 a gallon in gas.
Yes, and that's what I love about when we transition to the boat because we have a sailboat and
Yeah.
we don't hardly pay for any diesel. I think last year it was like $200 of fuel for like 5 months
Oh,
of
that's great.
Wow.
sailing. And so that's very affordable to sailboat. But when we bring the Sprinter back into the US in the summer, I get a bit of sticker shock with the gas prices and our
Mm.
Oh,
cost of living
absolutely.
goes way up with the restaurants, the grocery stores, and the fuel. And that's something people have to definitely budget for.
Yeah.
Unless you want to go park on BL, Bureau of Land Management for a month, which some people do, then you save money on gas. But we like to move more than that. And so
Yeah.
that is a substantial part of the budget in the summer.
Mm. I'm
Absolutely.
looking at your website and I'm clicking on the different tabs you have. What's a schoolie?
That's a school bus that people turn into a camper. That's a big
Oh,
thing people like to do.
Oh, my husband
Yes,
would
I
love
would
that.
yeah. Yeah, and they read because the bones of a school bus are very, like, robust because 'cause they're built to protect kids and to transport kids, and so people like that. RVs kind of rattle and fall apart sometimes. They're built with lightweight, cheaper materials where school bus has really hard bones, and so you can gut it, you can fix it, you can make it very beautiful in your own custom, tiny home. So a lot of people do that.
Here's an interesting question, and I just wonder if it's really an escape from reality.
yeah.
One of our viewers is oh wait, no, not that one. This one. Do people talk about Trump down there? How engaged? You're a
Mm.
news person. You were a reporter. How engaged are you still in like current events, politics? I mean, are you still following it? Or are you like, I'm so glad I could just be on my sailboat, middle of the ocean, and don't need to worry about any of that crap?
I still have the news bug. I think once you're a reporter,
Mm.
it's always in your blood.
Right.
And what's
Mhm.
interesting is I'm in Puerto Penasco, Rocky Point, where the border, Lukeville border, was just shut down. And this is a huge, 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 huge deal because that is the main thoroughfare between Phoenix and this town I'm in. And so this place depends on Phoenix tourism. It has like thousands of people here every weekend visiting, and it's a ghost town right now. It's really
Oh,
creepy.
wow.
It's weird to see. It's sad for these merchants. Everybody's struggling. And so I have this news like urge constantly that I'm actually out there taking pictures. I interviewed people. I posted it on Twitter and actually got interviewed in a couple of outlets
Oh,
and
nice.
quoted. I had a little quote in the New York Post. And so, yes, I am still really in tune with the news, especially when it's happening around me. And I do
Mhm.
read both the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal every morning. So I don't read the local news so much anymore, but I do read more national headlines and try to stay in touch with what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I could just imagine. I mean, part of me, I think just like you, Kim probably feels the same way. Once a news person, always a news person.
Yeah.
But I could imagine also just being like, click, just quiet, right? Just to kind of get away from all of that.
Mhm.
Okay, so what's next for you? So you're in Mexico. You're going to be what, sailing, and how can people obviously support you and follow you along your journey? Is it simply through the website?
Yeah, the best way is just through the website, and right at the very top, you can subscribe to my email list. So that's a really good way to stay in touch with me. I try to send out emails once a week, and through my email list, I also, will recommend products I like, and that helps me. If someone purchases a product through a link of mine on the website, that's a
Mhm.
way I make money, and it doesn't cost the person anything else. It just gives me a small commission kickback off of that link. So
Mhm.
if you need to purchase anything, click a link on my site or browse some of my articles, join my email list, or follow me I'm on Instagram as well and dabbling with TikTok. So I'm all over, the internet under the Wayward Home. So yeah, I'd love to hear from anybody. Like email me. I respond and read to all my emails, and it's fun keeping in touch with people for sure.
Well, I love seeing your face. I mean,
Yeah.
I was telling Kim, I was like, we're gonna have Kristin on. She's gonna talk about, and I'm just, it's so interesting, and
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. I know myself. I'm a creature comfort type of person,
Yeah.
but I do love camping. So I think I love the idea. We've always wanted to do RVs. We've wanted to take our kids, and we have two, a middle schooler and a high schooler. Where if I told them that they had to do even a quarter of what you did, they'd probably look
Mhm.
at me like I was nuts. But at the same time want to go take them out on an RV away from their electronics and just look out and
Mhm.
experience nature. And that's, I'm jealous of you in that aspect because, it's not an easy life, but it does
Mhm.
sound amazing. And I'm assuming you're really happy.
I am. I really like it, and I'm going to keep doing it until I don't like it, and then I'll probably purchase like a property
Mhm.
and transition to that lifestyle. But I'll just keep doing it until I think as long as it's fun is what people in this lifestyle say, as long as you like it. And luckily I do have a
Mhm.
backup monetary source.
Yes.
but but I have to say I do really miss you guys. Like one of the things that's fun about the news business is having colleagues in the news business.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I miss the most because we were all had so much fun together. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
so being out here, like there's nobody can relate to this business at all. Like
Yeah.
Right.
nobody knows, like there's a select few that have been in it. And so it's
Well,
also fun to speak to
if
both of
it's
you.
if it's any consolation, I here live in the same town where I grew up, and, there's not a lot of change going on in my life, and I look at what you're doing and I think, "What an adventure."
Yes.
There's always something different going on. There's always something, a new place you could go, a new thing you could see. It's like I realize there's hardships as well, but it is a bit like you're on this permanent vacation. And so
Yeah.
at least know that I'm looking at you that way, thinking
Exactly.
that you have quite the non-boring life as opposed to what I'm living over here. Yeah.
That's true. It does, and it suits my personality really well because I do tend to get bored kind of easily, and that's why I was a news reporter because it was always interesting
Always
and
different.
different.
Yeah.
And so is this, and this is I never know what I'm going to be doing next, or I kind of do, but not really. I could change it in a heartbeat, and
Yeah.
so I like that. I like the changeability of it and the excitement and adventure, and it's
Well,
quite
I
fun.
love seeing, yeah, I love seeing your face. The door is always open. We'd love to have you back on if you're on any